Revolutionary greetings, comrades. Professor Ibbo Mandaza delivered his political lecture to the OR Tambo Political School in Johannesburg last week. In this video, we just want to do a brief summary before we critique his presentation. He started his presentation by giving a historical background of the SADC Observer Team, what it has done, how it was formulated by SADC to observe elections, its role, the interventions that it has made, and the fact that it was the first of its kind to present such a report in the Zimbabwean election. The second point that Professor Mandaza raised was what he calls our own Lancaster House moment in Zimbabwe. And this is the area that you would want to critique. So Professor Mandaza proposes a transitional government in Zimbabwe, flowing from the disputed election outcome. Says elections in Zimbabwe should be declared null and void. And then in place, a transitional government must be put. He outlined how this transitional government should be established. Its task, eminent individuals that will be keen in facilitating dialogue among Zimbabweans that will result in the establishment of the transitional government. These negotiations, according to Prof. Mandaza, must be inclusive so that the transitional government which he spoke to or which he proposes should not be like the transitional government that we had from, should not be like the inclusive government that we had from 2009 to 2013, which was only made up of political parties that were represented in the Parliament of Zimbabwe. He says this must be inclusive, should involve political parties, civil society, churches, and everyone else. He is of the view that the transitional government will deliver a free and a fair election in Zimbabwe. So this is what the lecture by Professor Ibbo Mandaza was all about. So in the next video, we're going to critique his presentation. I might want to give you pointers that which we'll deal with in the next video. Prof. Mandaza did not give a class analysis of the Zimbabwean state. He confined himself to governance and the election question. Because to him, the transitional government which he proposes will ensure that elections are held in a free and fair environment to an extent that the outcome or their outcome will not be contested. So that's elections and the governance. So he did not deal with the class question or to characterize the Zimbabwean state, though he spoke briefly about the military, that it renews, it keeps on renewing itself after every election. And he thinks that this transitional government will then bring that to an end where the military renews itself. But we do not think that he did justice in giving a class analysis of the Zimbabwean state. To an extent, that flowing from that class analysis of the Zimbabwean state, we will then understand the challenges of an election, of holding free and a fair election. So in the next video, we'll then deal with this question, because if we do not do so, this transitional government that it proposes, it will just be a bourgeoisie transitional government, or it will a simple being an accommodation of civil society leaders and others into government, people who cannot contest and win an election, but then come through what is called a transitional government. Then they get into government. But we'll deal with these issues in the next video. But we thought it's important that before we critique, we simply summarize what Prof. Mandaza spoke about. Please share your views. I know that a number of you followed his presentation. I've seen the 3 minutes 40 seconds video where he speaks about Mugabe losing an election, alleging that President Mbeki assisted him. The video is circulating on social media. We will not get there because we do not have facts on that. But we want to deal with these issues that he presented, not in response to the comments coming from the floor, but what was in his presentation. Please like this video, circulate, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're on TikTok, please do follow us. Amandla, comrades.